All right, we're going to go on to the next slide. You want to put that in the full screen because there's some text on it. I don't think I've yet quite mentioned that we've claimed that most knowledge is tacit. We've talked about tacit and explicit, but I think you probably would easily understand that most knowledge is tacit. It's in people's heads. And I'll show you. There's a pretty head right there of Suan Nu in Singapore. And what I'm talking about inside of her head is the next picture, Darius. That's what it looks like inside of her head. That's a neuron. In fact, let's explode that and take a closer look at it. Darius, could you pop one more, please? Okay, there's a cell, a brain cell, and here's the question. If most knowledge is in people's heads, can we manage knowledge? In other words, if I'm going to do knowledge management, I'm going to ask you in Mumbai, how's your endoplasmic reticulum today? Have you folks been exercising your dendrites? Thank you for that feedback there. A few laughs. I appreciate that. But that's not what knowledge management is. In other words, if I were to claim to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you've heard the expression a shrink or head whatever. What's the expression? Head shrinker or whatever. In other words, I would claim as a psychologist or psychiatrist to be able to get into your head. Well, if I could get into your head, maybe I could manage the knowledge. But you understand that's physically impossible. So the point I'm making here is knowledge management is not literally the management of knowledge. I cannot get in there and exercise your dendrites and see how your mitochondria, I can't even pronounce it now unless I'm reading it. Well, I do have it right here, but you know what the word was. Endoplasmic reticulum, and are you exercising your whatever? That's not what I can do as a knowledge manager. So the question is, what is knowledge management all about? What can we manage? The next text on that says, what can we manage? And the answer is on the next slide. And this slide's a little busy, so you probably should keep it up on the full screen. This slide, I'm going to walk you through it. On the upper right-hand side is a circle that says the individual, that's you or your team or your community. And that's embedded in your organization. And your organization is in the world. Now I'm going to track through the three basic knowledge processes that comprise everything that goes on in your organization. The first one is to acquire information and knowledge, and it has other words for it, such as search, gather, find, capture, and validate. It looks like some of the things depicted over there on the left-hand side. Darius, you want to give it another click, please? There you go. Going outside and getting training, browsing the web, looking at published patent information, doing all other forms of research. That knowledge is brought in from the world into the head of some individual. The next knowledge process, depicted there as number 2, is the production or creation of new knowledge. That's through collaboration, refining, and creating, and always validating. And then finally, the last knowledge process, many authors call it transfer, but I think transfer is a very weak word to use here. If I transferred something to you, in other words, if I literally, I guess I can't literally do it, if I could virtually slide it across the desk to you 8,000 miles away, it might just sit there on your desk collecting dust. So transfer is not powerful enough. I think we need a stronger word. I'll suggest the word integrate. A simple word than integrate might be use, but the next pictures depict some of the ways that you integrate or use knowledge. You can publish it, and structure it, and store it. You can instruct in it, present it. You can share it with others and tell stories about it. And you can expose people to best practices where the knowledge is embedded in those practices themselves. The outcome of all of these knowledge processes is organizational learning. In fact, I might suggest to you that a better word for knowledge management might be creating a learning organization. Now, I don't want to get into, in this short session we have this morning, into some philosophical argument about the difference between words like knowledge management and creating a learning organization. Those are battling out in the marketplace, but historically, knowledge management was defined in the mid to late 90s, primarily because knowledge management was pushed by vendors who had products to sell, And those products primarily dealt with data and information, not so much knowledge. And they could control or manage the data and information. We had the information technology or information management, so they just extrapolated and went from information management to knowledge management. But we've just discussed that most knowledge is in the heads of the folks, of knowing folks. So we don't literally manage knowledge. What we manage are knowledge processes. And if we had more time today, we'd find out and become convinced that these knowledge processes exist throughout our entire organization. In fact, take any position in our organization, and that person, let's say a strategic planner, would say, I do strategic planning. I do competitive analysis, environmental analysis. I develop vision and mission, and we develop strategies, and we go implement the strategies. That's a typical strategic planning process. But every one of those activities that we're talking about are really knowledge processes. So a better way to describe strategic planning is not so much that it is strategic planning, but that strategic planning is a bundle of knowledge processes. And a knowledge manager is expert in those very processes themselves. A knowledge manager may know little about the concept of strategic planning, but a knowledge manager knows about the knowledge processes and can therefore help a strategic planner do a much better job at strategic planning. And if we have enough time at the end of today, I'll talk about a few technologies that are an exact example of what I'm talking about here. In other words, if strategic planners need to go out and do competitive analysis and environmental analysis, the traditional strategic planning department today has 5 or 6 or 8 or 10, depending on the size of the company, strategic planners who do that kind of research. They go out and use Google and Yahoo. They go and do interviews. They do whatever they can to uncover information about their competitors and about the environment. Well, a knowledge manager would say, that's fine, and you certainly have to achieve that objective of finding about your competitors and the environment. But there are some new tools